Chosen ones. Unexpected financial blessing is on its way, but not how you think. The financial blessing, heading toward your life right now, will not arrive through the door you've been watching. Let me say that again, because it matters more than almost anything else I could tell you today. The door you've been staring at, the specific opportunity, the particular person, the exact channel through which you've decided your breakthrough has to come. That door is not the one. And the devastating irony is that while you've been focused on it with everything you have, the actual door has been quietly opening behind you. To your left, through the person you wrote off as too small, through the idea you dismissed as too simple, through the channel you stopped monitoring because it didn't match the image you had in your head of what a life-changing financial blessing was supposed to look like. I've watched this pattern repeat in the lives of chosen ones across generations, across industries, across every conceivable variety of circumstances. The person who received the unexpected financial blessing almost never received it the way they planned, almost never through the route they mapped, almost never in the form they imagined. They received it through the unexpected, the sideways, the almost missed. The thing that arrived wearing completely ordinary packaging and almost got returned because it didn't look like the answer. And the ones who missed it, who waited for the specific form they decided the blessing had to take, missed something that was real and ready and already on its way, because their grip on the image of the answer was tighter than their grip on the answer itself. Today I want to loosen that grip, not on the dream, on the form, because what's coming toward you is real. It's just not what you think. There is an image living in your mind of what your financial breakthrough looks like. You didn't choose it deliberately. It assembled itself over time from everything you've hoped for, everything you've planned, everything you've prayed about in your most private and most honest moments. Maybe it looks like a specific business finally taking off. Maybe it looks like a particular client saying yes. Maybe it looks like a specific number appearing in a specific account. Maybe it looks like a job title, a contract, a deal, an inheritance, a windfall from a direction that makes sense given where you've been investing your effort. You have this image, and it is specific, and it is vivid, and it has become so entrenched in your understanding of what your breakthrough means that anything else, anything that arrives outside that specific frame, gets disqualified before it gets a real hearing. That image is not the problem. Having vision is not the problem. Knowing specifically what you're believing for is not the problem. The problem is when the image becomes the filter through which all incoming possibility is evaluated. When the question stops being, is this opportunity real and good, and becomes, does this match the picture I have? When the mind's capacity for pattern recognition, which is a gift, starts rejecting patterns it doesn't recognize, even when those patterns are carrying exactly what the recognized one was supposed to deliver. And here's what that costs you. The unexpected financial blessing, the real one, the one that is genuinely on its way to your life right now, does not match the picture. It never does. Because if it matched the picture exactly, it wouldn't be unexpected. And the specific, powerful, life-changing financial blessing heading your way is precisely that, unexpected, in its source, in its timing, in its size, in its form. In the story it tells about how abundance actually moves through the world when it's being sent to a specific person with a specific purpose. And the only way to receive it fully, the only way to recognize it when it arrives and say yes with everything you have, is to release your grip on the specific image of what it's supposed to look like. Not your grip on the faith, not your grip on the belief that something significant is coming, just the grip on the packaging it has to arrive in. Let the blessing choose its own door. Why God specializes in the unexpected, the divine preference for surprise. If you look at every major financial story in Scripture, every account of provision arriving in the life of someone who was running out of options, you notice something that is so consistent, it cannot be coincidence. It is always unexpected, always. Not just surprising in the pleasant, this is better than I hoped way. Genuinely, completely, structured to defy your predictions, unexpected. Designed to arrive through channels that made no logical sense. Delivered in forms that nobody in the situation would have chosen if they'd been drawing up the plan themselves. Provision appears through a bird carrying food, through a widow with almost nothing left, sharing what she has, through a fish with a coin in its mouth. through a storm that seems like it should destroy everything but instead delivers exactly what was needed, through an enemy who becomes an instrument of blessing, through a mistake that turns out not to be a mistake. The pattern is not random. It is intentional, because the unexpected blessing does something that the expected one cannot. It removes the human tendency to credit the channel rather than the source. When you receive what you expected through the means you planned, the temptation is to attribute the result to your own cleverness, to the plan, to the strategy, to the effort, and in doing so, to anchor your security in your own capacity rather than in the one who provides. But when the blessing arrives through a channel you didn't create, through a connection you couldn't have manufactured, through timing you couldn't have engineered, through a form you never would have chosen, there is no question about where it came from. And that clarity about the source is not just spiritually significant. It is practically important. Because the person who knows where their provision came from trusts the source to continue providing. They don't panic in dry seasons. They don't overgrip in abundance seasons. They don't make desperate decisions from fear, because they understand that what arrived once through unexpected channels can arrive again. The unexpected nature of your blessing is a feature, not a glitch. God specializes in this, and He is very, very good at it. The person you dismissed while your blessing is wearing a face you underestimated. This is the section I need you to read the most carefully, because the person I'm about to describe might be someone you've already met, someone who is already in your life or on the periphery of it, someone you've interacted with and moved on from without knowing what you left behind. Your financial blessing is connected to a person, not a faceless windfall from the sky, not a random deposit from nowhere. A specific human being with their own story, their own network, their own resources, their own access to the specific opportunity that your specific gifts and vision were made to meet, who is either already in your orbit or about to enter it. And the characteristic that makes this person so easy to miss is that they don't look the part. They are not presenting themselves with the energy of someone who is about to change your financial life. They are not coming through the channels you would expect someone significant to come through. They are not accompanied by impressive credentials or striking first impressions or the kind of unmistakable authority that you've been trained to associate with important connections. They might be the quiet person in the room who asked you one question and listened to your answer more carefully than anyone has in a long time. The acquaintance who keeps casually mentioning something that keeps accidentally touching the exact thing you've been working on. The person who seems insignificant by the standards of the environments you've been trying to break into, but who turns out to have access that the impressive people in those environments don't. The person who delivered the unexpected financial blessing in almost every story of this kind was always the person that the recipient had to actively choose to take seriously, had to override their initial assessment of. Who have you been underestimating lately? Who has been on the periphery of your awareness without getting your full attention? Who has mentioned something that you filed away as not relevant, as too small, as not the kind of thing that leads to the kind of thing you're looking for? That person deserves a second look. The skill you forgot you had, the hidden source of the coming blessing. There is something you know how to do, something you learned years ago, something you've been doing so naturally and for so long that you stop thinking of it as valuable, that is directly connected to the financial blessing on its way to you. I know that sounds general, but stay with me, because the specificity of it is going to land when you identify your particular version of it. Every chosen one carries gifts and skills that were developed in previous seasons for purposes that made sense at the time. And as those seasons close and new ones open, the gifts and skills of the previous season often get mentally filed under previous life, as background, as history, as things you used to do that aren't really relevant to what you're building now. But the universe does not waste investment. The skills you developed in previous seasons, the ones that cost you time and effort and genuine dedication to acquire, were not developed for the purposes you used them for first. Those were the training grounds. The purposes you developed them for were the rehearsal. And the unexpected financial blessing often arrives as a discovery that what you learned in the rehearsal is exactly what someone in your present world is willing to pay for, significantly, specifically, and in a way that you never saw coming, because you had already written off that skill as belonging to a chapter you'd already closed. Think back. What did you use to do that you stopped thinking of as valuable? What did you learn in a previous season through a career, a relationship, a creative pursuit? A season of crisis that required you to develop a specific competency that you've been carrying as background noise rather than as a foreground asset. The unexpected blessing might be wearing the face of something you already know how to do, and the person who is willing to pay generously for it might already be in your network, waiting for you to remember that you have it. The timing that makes no sense why the blessing is arriving now of all times, of all the aspects of the unexpected financial blessing. The timing is the one that will be the hardest to receive gracefully, because it never arrives when the circumstances support it. It always arrives when the circumstances argue against it, in a season of personal difficulty. When other areas of your life are demanding attention and energy. When you are not at your most polished or your most impressive or your most prepared to receive something significant. When, honestly, you would not have chosen this as the moment if the choice were yours. And I want to tell you why the timing is exactly right, even though it looks completely wrong. The blessing arrives in the difficult season, and not in spite of the difficulty, but because of what the difficulty has produced in you for a specific reason that only becomes clear in retrospect. The version of you in the difficult season is the most real, most unguarded, most genuinely yourself version that exists. The performance is down. The carefully managed presentation is stripped back. The authentic, unedited person is what people encounter when they encounter you right now. And that authenticity, that specific quality of having nothing left to protect and nothing left to perform, is more magnetic to the right people than any polished version you could have manufactured in a better season. The person who is about to bring the unexpected financial blessing into your life encounters you in this raw, real, genuine state, and they choose you. Not despite what you're going through, because of who it reveals you to be. The difficult season was the audition you didn't know you were in, and you passed it by simply being honestly, undefensively, completely yourself. The blessing's timing makes complete sense from outside the experience. You'll understand it fully when you're standing on the other side. The form that confused you when the blessing looks like a problem first, this sign, is the most counterintuitive of all and the most important to carry with you going forward. Sometimes the unexpected financial blessing arrives dressed as a problem, not a blessing with some inconvenient elements. An actual problem, a situation that when it first arrives presents itself entirely as something unwelcome, a loss that turns out to be a redirect, a rejection that turns out to be protection, a closing that turns out to be the necessary clearing for an opening that was impossible while the previous thing was still in place, a job that ends unexpectedly which feels like crisis and turns out to be the push toward the path that actually led somewhere, a contract that falls through which feels like failure and turns out to have preserved you from an arrangement that would have consumed the time and energy the real opportunity required, a relationship that ends which feels like loss and turns out to have freed a kind of specific kind of space and attention that the financial breakthrough needed in order to land. The blessing wearing a problem's clothing is not God being cruel. It is the necessary demolition that precedes the construction. And the universe, which is more creative than our expectations, sometimes moves a person toward their destiny through apparent setback because the setback is the only force available that is strong enough to redirect them from a comfortable wrong path onto an uncomfortable right one. Look back at your own story right now. Is there something that arrived as a problem in the last year, something you grieved, something you tried to prevent, something that felt like a loss that might, from a slightly different angle, look like the exact preparation your current moment required? And is there a situation in your life right now that is presenting itself as a problem that your mind has categorized as bad news that might be carrying something you haven't fully seen yet? Look again. The packaging is sometimes misleading, but what's inside is not. The small action that carries disproportionate financial consequence, one of the most consistent patterns in the arrival of unexpected financial blessings, is this. The action that catalyzes everything is almost always small, embarrassingly small, often, given the size of what it sets in motion. A reply to an email you almost deleted. A yes to an invitation you almost declined because it didn't seem worth the time. A 5-minute conversation at an event you almost didn't attend. A social media post you made casually that reached the exact right person at the exact right moment. A favor you did for someone without expecting anything in return that created a loyalty that eventually opened a door you didn't even know existed. None of these actions looked significant when they were taken. None of them announced themselves as the beginning of something. They were ordinary moments in ordinary days, and the person taking them had no idea that the small yes, the brief conversation, the unremarkable act of showing up, was the first movement of a sequence that would end in financial transformation. This pattern matters for you practically right now, because the small action that catalyzes your unexpected financial blessing is probably available to you today, not tomorrow. Not when the circumstances improve, or the conditions are right, or the season feels more aligned. Today. It's in the email you haven't answered, the connection you haven't followed up, the idea you've been sitting on, the offer you've been meaning to make, the conversation you've been postponing because it didn't feel like the right time. The right time is now. The action is small. The consequence is disproportionate. Move. The mindset shift that unlocks the receiving from transaction to alignment. There is a specific mental orientation so common among people who have been grinding and hustling and pushing for a long time that they don't even recognize it as a choice anymore, that is the single most consistent blocker of unexpected financial blessing. It is the transactional mindset. The mindset that says, I give this much effort, I receive this much return. I put in this much time, I get back this much money. I do this specific thing, I get that specific result. Every financial input has a corresponding output, and the relationship between them is direct, visible, and measurable. That mindset serves many purposes. It creates discipline. It creates accountability. It creates the specific kind of reliable effort that sustains things in ordinary seasons. But it is completely incapable of receiving unexpected blessing. Because unexpected blessing by definition doesn't follow the transactional logic. It doesn't arrive as a measurable return on a specific input. It arrives as a disproportionate, unearned, not directly caused by your effort outpouring of provision that has more to do with alignment than it does with effort. And the person whose entire mental model is transactional will look at an unexpected blessing and not know how to receive it. They will feel undeserving because they can't point to the specific effort that produced it. They will feel suspicious because the logic doesn't add up. They will feel guilty because having more than they directly earned violates their internal accounting system. The shift from transactional to alignment thinking says, I am not trying to earn the blessing. I am trying to be in the right position to receive it. My effort is not the mechanism that produces the blessing, it is the evidence of my faithfulness to the process. And the blessing flows to the person whose life is aligned with the purpose it's meant to serve, regardless of whether the amount matches the direct effort invested. Make that shift, internally, in the way you relate to the incoming provision. Open hands receive what grasping hands cannot. The gratitude that accelerates the arrival. Why Thanksgiving is not just spiritual but practical. This section is for the person who skips the gratitude practice because it feels performative, or because it feels dishonest to be grateful for things that haven't arrived yet, or because, frankly, the current circumstances don't feel like they warrant the kind of wholehearted thankfulness they've been told to practice. I want to give you a different frame for gratitude. Not the spiritual frame, though the spiritual dimension is real. The practical, neurological, energetically concrete frame. Gratitude is not just a feeling. It is a frequency. And it is one of the most specific and most powerful frequencies for attracting and recognizing unexpected financial blessing. Here is why. The mind that is running in a chronic gratitude deficit, that is primarily scanning its environment for evidence of lack, of threat, of what's missing and what's not working, is a mind with its pattern recognition calibrated for scarcity. It will find what it's looking for. It will notice the evidence of lack, and in noticing primarily the evidence of lack, it will miss the evidence of incoming provision that is simultaneously present in the same environment. Gratitude recalibrates the pattern recognition system. It trains the mind to scan for evidence of blessing, to notice what is already working, what is already provided, what is already evidence of provision in a life that contains more of it than the scarcity-focused mind has been registering. And in developing that recalibration, in training the mind to see blessing that's already present, you develop the exact same neural pathway that will recognize the unexpected financial blessing when it arrives in its particular, surprising, not what you expected form. The person who practices gratitude is not just being spiritually compliant. They are training their recognition system to see what the ungrateful mind will walk right past. Be grateful, specifically, daily, for everything that is already evidence of provision. And watch how that gratitude opens your eyes to what's already arriving. The network you've been, neglecting the relationship that has the key, one of the most practically significant sections of this message, because what I'm about to say points to something you can do today that has a direct, concrete connection to the unexpected blessing on its way. There is someone in your existing network, not a stranger, not a future connection. Someone you already know who holds a piece of the puzzle that your financial breakthrough requires. They may not even know they hold it. You may not know they hold it, but it is there, in the space between where they are and where you're going, waiting for the conversation that reveals it. And the reason this connection hasn't yet produced what it's capable of producing is simple. You haven't had the right conversation yet. Either because you haven't had the conversation at all because life got in the way, or you assume the connection wasn't relevant to what you're building, or you let the relationship drift without maintenance, or because you've been having the surface version of the conversation rather than the one that goes deep enough to reveal what's actually possible. The message here is not complicated. Reach back. Look at your existing network with fresh eyes. Not for who is most impressive. Not for who is in the industry you're targeting, but for who you have a genuine connection with that you haven't fully invested in lately. Who you've let drift without meaning to. Who showed interest in what you're building and you didn't follow up with. Who offered something at some point that you weren't ready to receive then but might be now. Make the list. Reach out. Have the conversation that goes past the pleasantries into the real. Share honestly what you're working on and what you're hoping to build. Ask genuine questions about what they're doing and what they need. Create the conditions for the mutual discovery that is the soil of every unexpected blessing that arrives through human relationship. The unexpected. Blessing doesn't always fall from the sky. Sometimes it walks through the door of a conversation you chose to have. Open the door. What to do when it arrives, the receiving protocol that protects the blessing because the blessing is unexpected by nature. The arrival will catch you off guard. And being caught off guard at the moment of receiving something significant is one of the ways that chosen ones compromise what they've been working toward. Not through malice. Through being unprepared for the specific emotional and practical challenges of a sudden shift from the pattern they've been living in. So let me give you a receiving protocol, a set of orientations to carry with you so that when the unexpected financial blessing arrives, you are prepared to receive it in the way that allows it to stay and grow rather than pass through your hands and evaporate. The first orientation is pause before reacting. Whatever form the blessing takes, whatever conversation or offer or opportunity presents itself, resist the impulse to respond in either extreme. Don't say yes before you've sat with it long enough to understand it. Don't say no because the packaging surprised you. Create the space between stimulus and response that allows wisdom rather than reaction to guide what happens next. The second orientation is receive it as a beginning, not a destination. The unexpected financial blessing that's coming is not the end of the story. It is the opening of a new chapter. It is seed, not just harvest. And how you receive seed, whether you consume it immediately or plant it thoughtfully, determines whether you eat once or eat indefinitely. The third orientation is protect it before you announce it. The blessing in its earliest, most vulnerable form needs the protection of your silence. Not forever, but long enough for the structure to be established before the ecosystem around you has a chance to respond to it in ways that create pressure before you're ready to navigate it. The fourth orientation is steward it with the intentionality of someone who understands its source. The unexpected nature of the blessing means you didn't engineer it through your cleverness, which means the best way to honor it is to deploy it in service of the purpose it was sent to fund, not to spend it in celebration of your cleverness, but to invest it in faithful service of the calling that made you the right person to receive it. These four orientations: pause, receive it as beginning, protect it in silence, steward it with intention, are the receiving protocol that transforms a one-time blessing into a lifetime of provision. Practice them before the blessing arrives, so they are instinctive when it does. What I need you to walk away knowing I want to leave you with something that is not a strategy and not an instruction. Something that lives at a level deeper than either of those. The unexpected financial blessing heading toward your life right now is not arriving because you finally figured out the right formula. It is not arriving because you performed your faith correctly or earned it through sufficient suffering or stayed positive when you technically had permission to be negative. It is arriving because you were chosen. Because your specific life with its specific history of hardship and specific depth of preparation and specific combination of gifts and wounds and vision was identified before you were born as the right vessel for a specific kind of provision that serves a specific kind of purpose. And the provision is being sent to that vessel now, not on your timeline, not through your chosen channels, not in the form you imagined or through the people you designated or on the schedule you constructed. On God's timeline, through God's channels, in a form that only God's creativity could design, through people and situations and convergences that carry the unmistakable signature of something that was assembled by hands more capable than yours. The only thing this requires from you right now is one specific, irreducible, non-negotiable thing. Stay open, open to the unexpected form, open to the unlikely channel. Open to the person you'd otherwise underestimate and the idea you'd otherwise dismiss and the opportunity that doesn't match the image but carries the substance. Open to being surprised by how good God is at delivering exactly what you need through exactly the method that makes the source undeniable. The blessing is on its way. It is real. It is significant. And it is going to arrive in a way that when you're standing on the other side of it, looking back at the moment it walked into your life, you will shake your head at with a mixture of wonder and laughter and the specific, deep, permanently transforming recognition that the God who provides for you is more creative than you ever fully believed. Stay open. What's coming is better than what you planned, and it's closer than you think. If something in this message gave your faith a specific targeted boost, if you felt something shift in how you're holding what's coming, subscribe and stay close. Every message in this space is designed to find you at exactly the right moment with exactly the right word. Subscribe. The unexpected is already on its way. Stay open to receive it.